Hello, and thank you for joining me today for a chat about one of our favorite hobbies, tabletop role playing games. This is Whispers from the Phylactery, and today I want to focus our chat on something a bit more intimate. There is a particular kind of silence that happens at a table with only two people. There's no crosstalk, there's no waiting for your turn, there's no side conversations drifting in and out of focus, as happened last Friday a lot. There's just one player, one game runner or storyteller, and the space that exists at the table, a story filled with new possibilities. One on one tabletop role playing has always existed on the edges of the hobby. Sometimes it's framed as a compromise, something you do because not enough people could make it. Sometimes it's treated as a stepping stone or a backup plan. But I want to shine a light on the things that one on one play emphasizes and why I think it deserves its own recognition. Because running a tabletop role playing game one on one isn't a lesser version of play. It's a different play, but it is its own thing. It offers a depth of connection, narrative focus, and creative freedom that larger tables really struggle to replicate if they can replicate it at all. So today, let's talk about what happens when the party size drops down to one player, why it works, what it gives you, and why some of the most meaningful stories in this hobby can be told across a very small table. So, the first part I want to bring up is the power of undivided attention. In a traditional group game, attention is really a shared resource. You're tracking spotlight time. You are making sure everyone gets a moment in the sun, balancing scenes so that no one fades into the background. Even at the best tables, attention is divided by necessity. And worst of all, you can end up with the main character, air quotes there, that want it all to themselves. In a one on one game, that sort of tension and the problem of dividing attention disappears. I mean, every scene is for your player. Every decision matters to everyone involved because there's no back and forth, and every consequence lands directly. There's no real need to hurry a moment along because someone else hasn't spoken in a while, which can really happen. You can linger on things. You can let it sit in silence when it calls for it, and you can let an emotional beat breathe without worrying about momentum or trying to get everything done in this one session. And I think this changes the tone of the game in, well, subtle but more powerful ways. Players will tend to speak more freely. They take risks that they wouldn't normally take. Uh, they might explore thoughts and emotions that otherwise they keep brief or not bring it up at all due to potential embarrassment at the gaming table. One on one, you can ask questions not just because you might need mechanical clarity, but also because you're curious and you're not worried about it taking too long. I know for some players, if they like to be, we'll say, lore enthusiasts, they don't want to ask a bunch of questions from the king or the regent or the info broker in a sci-fi game or a corpo suit because everyone else at the table wants to move along and do the next thing. They aren't as interested in the lore. But one on one, there's no one to rush you. And as a GM or storyteller, you're no longer juggling several spinning plates. You're listening, hopefully, working on your active listening, to the player, what the player wants, not just really what they say, but how they say it, where they hesitate, and what plot beats or information they circle back to. Um, which that kind of information, when you're not being bombarded with it from all sides, can really build a game and a story to memorable outcomes. So focusing in on that, which is part two, is that one on one stories are even more focused on player agency, which is something that we don't like to always admit to ourselves or out loud into the internet. It's Most tabletop campaigns are not about the characters equally. They can't be. There's not enough time. If one player wants to pursue a personal lead for their character growth and another wants to chase the main plot, I mean, your third party member could just be happy to follow along. The story becomes a conversation between many desires or defaults to a single party leader when decision paralysis sets in. It gets tricky to incorporate all these into a woven plot if everyone wants something a little bit different. But in one on one play, that negotiation, well, it doesn't disappear entirely. You should always be negotiating the story, even in a full table. Negotiate the story. Just because you set something on session 0 before the campaign even started does not mean it's set in stone. If something is no longer working for you, bring it up. If you feel like you want something to take a certain direction, bring it up. Like, we're all working together to tell the same story. So, specifically with a one on one tabletop role playing game, it becomes that player's interests are the story. That's it. If they care about a relationship with an NPC, it should become central to the plot. If they fixate on a specific mystery, it can deepen. If you only had notes about, well, there's some cult activity in the region, and the player really latches onto that, great. You know where you need to take your story now. And if your player decides to walk away from an obvious plot hook, then the world can reshape itself around that choice. This is part of where the initial negotiation comes in, is ideally you know what the rough elements are before you get into this. But if something isn't jiving and your player just isn't biting at it, you don't have to worry about it. You just go with the flow. And the part of what I like is that the entire narrative and the story is built around a single history. It can be a single fear or a single unanswered question. You can weave NPCs directly into the character's past. You can let the setting sort of ripple outward with the weight of their choices and what they bring to the world more easily than you can with a party, and tying everything together. So the themes in a one-on-one game become very personal instead of abstract notions. We're thinking redemption stories, slow burn corruption arcs, intimate tales that are grief, hate, obsession, or hope. These are things you can do with a party, of course, and they can be the subject of a campaign, but the emotional investment is never quite as high, I find. Maybe it's just the groups I've had, but I find it's elevated one on one. So, yeah, because your main character never has to compete for narrative relevance, I mean, they're more willing to be vulnerable, to let their character fail quietly, or to sit with the consequences instead of rushing towards the next distraction. Although that might just be a player thing, I might have been blessed with good players. But this often results and feels like less like a game night and more like just an ongoing conversation. Sort of how I hope these come across, but it's a conversation and a connection that unfolds over weeks or months, however long you're running this particular thing. And that doesn't mean that the GM or the storyteller has less influence. It means that their role shifts a little bit. Instead of steering a group and being a babysitter, you're responding to a single perspective. You are aiming to build a world that bends, reflects, and it should resist the player's choices. I'm a big proponent of not just doing the fantasy, get everything you want. My worlds are grim and fatalistic, um, and things are hard, but then victory's earned. Circling back on that, sorry. You're not trying to control the sole player character, but you're trying to take them seriously as a character and as a person in this story. This isn't ideal for group play, but it comes down to negotiation. And it's a lot harder to negotiate with a table full of people than it is just one on one. In one on one stories, failures hit harder and successes feel more earned because there's no buffer of party consensus. You can't hide behind something like, oh, well, it was their plan. When something goes wrong, it's personal. It was your choice. When something goes right, well, then that's that sweet, sweet validation, right? So I find one on one play turns traditional player agency into more of a co author role of the story, which ideally everyone should have input in the story, but it is more significant in a one on one game. The players aren't just in the story experiencing it, they're helping guide it in a more involved manner than is possible in a group setting when you have so many different opinions. Too many chefs in the kitchen. Basically, what I'm saying is summing that part up. These are things that are possible in group settings. They're just elevated and on a more personal connection between two people in a solo game. But moving on to part 3, and that is systems that thrive with 2 players. So while you can run almost any system one on one, and I have had some success doing that with both Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder and the World of Darkness. I find the World of Darkness really lends itself because it is more narrative focused. Some games are clearly designed with the duo playstyle in mind, and these are generally smaller indie tabletop role playing games, which often assume a a more intimate connection, not in the romantic sense, although it can be, and those type of games do exist. You see them on social media a lot, the little ads. Um, these tabletop role playing games lean into character driven mechanics and shared narrative authority, flexible pacing, and just overall less mechanical weight behind them. So games like Ironsworn and Starforged are built around focused protagonists and personal journeys that their characters go on. They are designed to function with one game master or storyteller and one player. Or you can even do them solo because the mechanics, they expect reflection, interpretation, and consequences built in. It is a journey. Then there's Thousand-Year-Old Vampire, which is more of a journaling exercise and makes that into a role playing game. And that is, it's out of the box, it's a single player game, which is a deeply personal experience that works. You go on this internal adventure as you journal through the prompts, but it can be worked just as well, beside it's shared between 2 people with just some minor tweaking. And the internet is full of these kind of games. Small indie publishers. There are so many games out there. We shouldn't limit ourselves just to the big names. So many of these 2-player focused games, they strip away excess structure. And they're really just asking themselves, what happens when 2 people agree to tell a story honestly? They don't demand character optimization or tactical mastery. They reward attention, memory, or note taking in my case, because my functional memory is very poor, and emotional continuity. They're less about winning which I feel all games should be. Is it's not about winning the game, and they're more about the story. So I will readily admit that this kind of game and this level of game can be awkward or difficult for some, myself included in that. I mean, the stereotype about the awkward or shy hobbyist is not without reason, unfortunately. And I know I have my own issues with examining emotions and being into that. There are some two-player RPGs I can't do because they're so emotion-based. But I think that it is an experience that everyone should really try at least once. Um, although I'm a big thing of you can't really try something once to know if you like it or not. The first time might be a fluke. You need to do it 2 or 3 times just to make up your mind fully. I guess in the end, let's close off our chat for today. Running a tabletop RPG one on one isn't about doing more with less. I don't want to give that impression. It's just doing something different. It's more about the presence between two people, about the trust to make a story and the connection, about stories shaped carefully by two people who are fully engaged and paying attention. No one's on their phone, no one's distracted. You're just in the moment. So, if you've ever felt curious about it, or hesitant maybe, but you're intrigued at the idea, then I really encourage you to consider this and look into it. Not even look into it, just run it, do it. You don't need special prep. You don't need a perfect system, because I'm not sure there's ever a perfect system. You just need a willingness to be open, to listen, to respond, and to let everything sort of take its time and come out. Speaking of time, thank you for spending this time with me. If you made it all the way to the end, extra thank you. Can't say that enough. If you like this video, consider liking, leaving a comment. And if you want to hear more about my thoughts on tabletop role-playing games, well, click that subscribe button down below. Uh, for the games I've mentioned in this video, there will be links in the description. And that's it. Until next time, adventurers.